So when we were talking about this, we were figuring out what I was going to talk about, and we decided let's go with like a life story, if you will, what got us here today up here on this platform and talking this morning. So that's what we're going to do today is kind of dive into who I am, what I'm about. We've shared some small things, some small sermons with little details. So we're just going to, I guess, talk about me for a little bit. Kind of like Jeremy does every week. Just kidding. So my name's Cody. I'm the associate pastor, praise and worship pastor here at Movement Church. 37. I was born in 1987, August 23rd. It was my birthday, and 37 is a lot harder than 36. I woke up with more back pain and gray hair. So on that, again, I was born here in Safford. My mom, Lori, is down here. My dad, Corey, you've seen him here once or twice. He lives up in Idaho. Born into more of my mom's side's Baptist, my dad's side's LDS Mormon. So there was always confusion for me and my younger brother about where to go, because we go hang out with my dad, we're black shirt, skinny tie. We hang out with my mom, we're praising Jesus and running around. So we learned a lot in our younger years, the formidable years, as far as church and what it means to go to church and be a good Christian. Again, my life, it started kind of shooken up a little bit, bouncing back between schools and homes and stuff like that. But honestly, that is kind of what played a key part in my upbringing of my own children and myself as an adult. Like I said, we moved a lot growing up. Between here in Arizona and up in Idaho is mostly where I spent my childhood, back and forth between Safford and all over Idaho. So it was real hard to get real good friends and kind of hang out with them, just knowing that there's a chance, next year or 2 months from now, I'm not going to see him again. So kind of sheltered myself a little bit and protected myself, as did my younger brother too. He did the same thing. So we were kind of each other's best friend, if you will. We did a lot together, and everything we did was together. We started separating a little bit once we started getting older, as to where we would live. And graciously, our parents kind of gave us a choice. And, I'm thankful for that, because it kind of gave us an idea of what we wanted to do and the freedom to kind of grow up ourselves and see, who we wanted to be as adults. And that is one thing I found, that family truly is and always will be your best friend. So again, we moved quite a bit, living with different relatives and stuff like that, and the church scene for us was quite interesting. Like I said, my dad's side is pretty heavily into the LDS side. All my cousins served missions and always visiting temples and Wednesday night having the youth nights and stuff like that. And growing up, it was cool, because we wanted to be a part of something like that. So living with my dad, we would attend just to get that feeling of a belonging, if you will. And when we would be with my mom, there's a Baptist church across the street that we would kind of do the same thing. And growing up, we always found the church family was always the one, that we could consider our friends, because they'd always welcome us in without any sort of ill intent or fear of us losing them, because they would always kind of keep in contact. So my mom's dad, my grandma Mary, was really huge in our walk with God. She, again, was LDS, but she encouraged us to branch out and find Jesus Christ on our own, not necessarily follow the way of the LDS religion, but simply wanted us to find Jesus Christ and to worship him in our own way. whether it be a Baptist church, a Catholic church, a Mormon church. It didn't matter to her as long as we were able to find Jesus Christ. That was number one for her. And, being young, 13, 14 years old, being confused about where I wanted to live, who I wanted to be with, and what church I wanted to go to. A lot of depression set on early on in my teenage years. I was the oldest, had 7 siblings, and being the oldest, always got asked different questions about, why and how come, we're living 1,000 miles away from our siblings over here. There was always questions, and carrying that weight was something pretty difficult. But I took it in stride, if you will, and did my best to kind of keep brothers and sisters together. That's what was important, was us staying together. Even though we're thousands of miles apart, we still kept a relationship. Until this day, even stepbrothers that are no longer stepbrothers, we're still brothers. We were in each other's lives for 30 plus years, and that relationship carried just because of our bond that we had growing up, and that's something that'll never change. So again, being the oldest, there was a lot of feeling helpless, worthless, stuff like that, and I struggled pretty heavily with guilt and shame. Like, is it my fault that this happened? Am I the root cause of divorce? Am I, a million different things run through your head. And 13, 14, 15 years old, that's pretty impressionable age. So you hear of all these kids nowadays, especially nowadays with mental health issues. And when I was growing up, it wasn't as big, but going through it like I did, I see it now, and I see why. In today's society, there's 1 in every 3 households has mom and dad, not stepmom, stepdad, stuff like that. And it was like a 1 in 3 has their mom and their dad under the same roof. And though it's sad, things happen, and that's understandable, but the burden that you feel as a kid can be tough and lead you to these depressive thoughts and stuff like that. And again, I did struggle, and when I moved back here permanently, I think it was my sophomore year. My youngest sibling was 2 or 3 maybe, and I had this amazing task of babysitting Dora the Explorer. You look up and she's gone, climbing trees, under cars, never knew where she was. But that being tasked with not really raising, but being responsible for a younger sibling, especially at that age, that kind of helped me through, I guess, if you will. Because not only was I living for me, trying to make me good, but I wanted to leave the impression on her that, hey, yeah, life can bite you, but you'll get through it. I got through it. So again, it was tough growing up. I was wrecking 4-wheelers, had my finger cut off trying to work. It was completely amazing. High school years, and once I knew I was staying here is kind of when I started to branch out. I was playing sports, joined band, had a lot of good friends at the other school. I went to Thatcher, but my siblings and everybody else went to Safford. So naturally, I kind of drifted towards all my Safford friends, and that's actually where I first met Jeremy, because he's still Matt's brother, regardless of what he says. Matt was part of our group. All of our friends, Matt was, and still is, a good friend of mine, and we always had this ragtag little brother hanging out with us because his mom and dad said so. But fast forward now, he's my best friend, so it's kind of weird, and Matt's Jeremy's brother, so it's a whole thing. Also in high school, you talk about your first love and finding your high school sweetheart. Never works out, it's a fantasy thing, but Went to a friend's birthday party and met my wife, and we were together all through my junior year, senior year, most of her sophomore year, junior year, senior year. And it was like, okay, after high school, probably not going to last, but I was like, hey, I kind of like this girl, and we get married young. Everybody's like, you're never going to make it. You're so young. It never works out. Look at us. And I'm like, well, look at you. We're different. And it worked. We've been together for 20 some years now and married for 18. We got 3 kids. So that was a huge, huge blessing in my life. Being young parents, we had that task of growing up from, we're teenagers, and now we have a kid. So it's like, what, we got to grow up and be responsible and do this. And all this while, I've kind of put Jesus on the back burner. I still prayed every single day, but I wasn't active in the church at all. I didn't have time, or so I told myself I didn't have time. When we were looking for somebody to marry us, it was really hard because all the pastors around here were like, nope, you don't go to our church. You're too young. We're not gonna. And one guy said something about 6 months of going to church, and then he might. And her uncle knew a pastor. I think he was in Duncan, right? Duncan. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it, and we're like, oh, cool. But, that feeling was like, dude, we're not part of a church. No one's going to want to marry us. And I don't want to go to the courthouse and do it, And that kind of stuck with me a little bit. Like, we're not active in the church. And my grandmother always pinned it on us like, hey, I don't care what it is, but you need to follow Jesus Christ in your life. So we get married. We have Riley, and trying to work in Safford, just, it was the mine life or no life. So I got the bright idea to join the Army and not tell a soul other than my wife that I was doing this. And one random day, I'm fishing with my recruiter, and he drops me off, and my mom and my dad and my stepdad and my stepmom are all outside. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm going to the Army. And that was a good time. They were happy, but they weren't because we were hiding it from them. But that came, going to basic training came pretty quick. And in basic training, I remember my first week there, I wanted to go home because they're yelling at you, the food sucks, and they're making you do push-ups, and it's cold, and they shaved my head. It was miserable. I remember talking to her. I was like, dude, I'm done. This ain't for me. I want to go back and work at the mine because they don't make you shave your head and you cook okay. So that's kind of how it went, right? And my second week there, they put you in reception, and the next week you go, they call it going across the tracks. You get in these cattle cars, and you go across, and you're getting yelled at by the brown rounds and basically telling you that you're nothing, and they build you up or tear you down and build you up. That's their whole outlook on everything, and it worked. But the second week, every Sunday was a day of you're either going to church or you're cleaning. And I was like, I'm not cleaning, so yeah, I'll go to church. And I had a good friend of mine through basic training that's like, hey, come with me. And he went to just a non-denominational, church kind of like this, where they sang music, they talked about God, and you got cookies that were good, that weren't stale, and you got coffee that was good. So I was like, you know what, sign me up, let's go. And they put us in an air-conditioned bus. It was real super nice. Every Sunday we were gone for like 4 hours. And that first Sunday, it kind of like, they speak to you down there in a different way because you're on a military installation going through basic training. So they're very sensitive to your wants and your needs and what you're going through because they know emotionally you're a wreck, mentally you're a wreck, physically you're a wreck, and they play to it. And every Sunday after that, I went every single Sunday in basic training. Reason being is because I felt like I belonged, and I remember my grandma saying, you're going to find something you like. And so, I was like, okay, well, once I'm out of basic training, we're going to find a church like this in El Paso where I got stationed, and that's what I wanted to do for my wife and kids. And I went to AIT, which is a training, and Sunday was like my only day off, so I moved my wife and Riley up there in this little tiny apartment just so I can get away from the base. I needed, some time to do that. Never went to church over there. Do I regret it? Absolutely, because there's a lot of good things that I hear about over there. But again, my thought was, we're going to get into the church once we get settled and stuff like that. Unfortunately, as soon as we got settled, they said you're deploying, so that put everything back on the back burner. Overseas, I was able to attend some services over there, but it's different. War zone churches are really interesting. When you got bunkers in the church next to the pews and stuff, it's interesting. The preachers are super cool and down to earth. The music was still great, but it was a little bit different than what I remembered. And coming home, the same mindset for me. And we talked about it. We want to get in the church. We want to get our kids involved. And we went to a retreat that was put on by a church. It was like love language or something like that. And that kind of opened our eyes too. That was real important for us. In the Army, it was amazing. Had a great time. Met a lot of awesome people. Did a lot of cool things. Got hurt a few different times, but kind of shrugged it off. Was diagnosed with lupus while I was in the Army, so there was a lot of health issues that were starting to form up. And unfortunately, that led to the Army saying, you're not going to deploy, but we're going to give you this awesome exit package. And after talking with a few people, it was better to take the package than not, and then wind up getting kicked out off of, whatever. I tried deploying tooth and nail. I had people writing letters because my unit was deploying. She was ticked off because I was trying to deploy, and she's like, no, you don't need to go again. It's really bad over there. And I tried. I fought. I was screaming. I even went and got all my gear, like 2 weeks for deploying, and they said, no, you need surgery on your shoulder, so I didn't get to go. So I got out, and we moved back here to Safford. Again, now I'm with family and friends, and we can really focus on establishing our family post-military life. We can get into church. We can teach our kids about Jesus Christ and, live the good life here in Safford. Safford was dried up in that time, and there's really nothing here. So moved around a little bit, wound up in Idaho working as a medic in the prisons. And that's when my health just completely took off, in not a good way. There was like a 3-month period where I was like bedridden, multiple surgeries. And, in my head, when I was praying at night, it's like, am I being punished now because I kept saying I'm going to go to church, I'm going to teach my kids about Jesus Christ, raise my family in a good Christian way, and I wasn't. So, deep down I felt I was a disappointment, and this is a punishment, and it's not the way to think, but that's how I was thinking. So we decided that we were going to come back here to Safford. Family was here, friends are here. Can't really say that healthcare was better here, but we had more options as far as family and friends to help us out. And when we very first moved back, my mom and her husband kept bugging us to go to this church. It was New Life up on the hill. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to wait. And then we went one day because she promised to make like tacos or something. So I was like, cool. Bribe me with food. We'll go and check this thing out. And I was just floored by the amount of people, the way they were praising and worshiping God, and the worship team. I've always been into music. Music's been a huge part of my life. And just watching how much and how intimate they were playing their music up there, and getting this congregation of people to move with them and to sing with them and to praise God with them. It was insane. I had seen it before, but never at that intimate level. And Justin Tudor was the praise and worship leader over there, and he, something came up and they needed somebody to play music. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And the very first time I was up there, we practiced, didn't feel any different. It was another day in the office. When we started playing, and the congregation is standing up and they're praising and worshiping with us, I just had this feeling that came over that it was pretty intense. It's really kind of hard to explain. It was such a great feeling, but a few weeks passed and we're really getting into it, and then he offers me a permanent position on the praise and worship team, and I took that and I ran with it. I started leading some of the services or the praise and worship, and my family, my wife and kids are getting involved with it. And then some old lady up in Clifton decided to run me over with a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something, and I got sidelined. Had some things happen to the southern region that weren't great, fractured my hip. And so I had to start going and seeing Mark, Jeremy's dad. And one day we're talking about music, and he comes in and is doing my vitals, and we're talking about praise and worship music. Kind of gave my experience, and I was like, I'm really digging this. And he had to go out of town to like Florida or something, and Mark asked if I could go and sit in. This is when he was in Wilcox, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll go to Wilcox, hang out with Mark, play music with Mark, because it's, this is now my passion, praise and worship music, and they needed help. And, it went great. Jeremy comes back and asks me if I can help him one of the weekends. And, all throughout my appointments, we talked zero about my health. We were just talking about church and pastimes, and it was like, okay, let's refill you, let's do your blood pressure. But then we spent like an hour just jibber jabbering about whatever, like, hey, do you remember this, or do you remember this, or this guy, or catching the desert on fire, all kinds of fun stories. And when I went up and helped him, we had a conversation on the way back, and it was a conversation that either of us had anticipated or thought about or wanted necessarily, but there was like this conversation that was given, put into my mind and his mind about working together, I guess, to establish this relationship in our walk with God. And I mean, he was still a young pastor, and I had never been anything else but on the praise and worship team. And he's like, hey, I think God is wanting us to do this together, and you can lead praise and worship. And at first, that's a pretty big task, being asked to lead a congregation in praise and worship. Did I want to do it? Absolutely. Was I scared? Yes. I wasn't going to say no. So we decided that was the thing. There's a lot of thoughts and prayers and conversation had with multiple people about it, and the pastor over at New Life, Phil Tudor, encouraged it, which there's a weird feeling when you move to another church to take a position. It's I don't want to call it poaching, but most people would call it poaching, because he come in and he's like, hey, I'm going to take your guy, and I thought they were going to be like, oh, you can't do that. But, Pastor Phil he's like, there was something that I was spoken about, and this is it. I firmly believe that this is where you're supposed to be, and God told me that he wanted you to do this. He needs you to branch out and share what you've got. And after I shared that with Jeremy, we're like, let's do this. We're super young, didn't know how it was going to go, because we are as young as we are, and we're leading this church. And Wilcox was not full of a younger generation. They were kind of set in their ways, but it was a good time. They were very receptive to what we had to offer and what I had to offer. And we had this whole thing planned out, and we did 1 week, and it was amazing. And the next week, the president says we're shutting down the country, COVID's here, and that really just completely derailed everything. And at this point, I'm like, okay, this is my faith right now. I just made this huge plunge into this. I was comfortable where I was at. I'm taking on something new, and then you get blindsided by this. And there's a lot of what the heck just happened. I gave it all to God, and now here we are. Now we're nothing. We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. But Jeremy's like, you know what? We're still going to do this. And we were in a hot garage doing this every Sunday. And it didn't matter if we had one person, 50 people watching. We did it. And we still got that feeling of success, if you will. And it was amazing. And, when the district decided to kind of close down Wilcox, there was I would say they were like a sigh of relief, but a like depression almost, because, we worked and we had this vision, and it's really weird when two people haven't talked in 15 years, but then you come together and you have the same vision, and excited to share it with each other. They shut it down, and so we were like, let's just go ahead and let's, visit other churches. Let's see what other churches are doing in this county, and see how God is moving throughout this valley. And we got the call to come here. And during that whole time, I start kind of declining a little bit again. Fought some small cancer and stuff like that, all while doing this, and again, this is me, like, am I not doing enough? Did I do the wrong thing? And constantly questioning my faith, because every time I took a step forward, there was like 3 steps back for whatever reason it was. And, I was able to find a provider that kind of changed a whole lot for me. She mentally, physically, emotionally, she was able to put me on the right track. And she's done a lot for me. She's done a lot for Jeremy, and not necessarily someone that comes to church every Sunday, but she was a godsend, and for me and my family. And when that started happening, we got this. They called us and said, Movement Church, and Jeremy called me super excited one day, and I did not know why he was so excited, and he could barely talk, and it was really cool because he told me about this, and I was scared because I had actually played here a few times. We'd come over and done the praise and worship a few times throughout the summer. It was like 2019, 2020. And, I was like, oh man, there's a few people there, and, I don't want to go in and then be like, oh, that guy, not happening. But the open arms was really neat. And this ride that we've been on for 3 years now, so getting ready to celebrate our third anniversary, if you will. And in 3 years, I have seen just a mass change in my everyday. Again, giving it to God every day is what I started doing. I was very stubborn with it, because all throughout my childhood, my teenage years, I felt He wasn't there. I would give it. It was literally praying every day and no result. It talks about being patient, and God will provide. He's going to put you through the trials, but you will prevail. And honestly, I don't know. Well, I know why, but in the last year and a half or so, our lives have changed completely, but for the better. We've gotten a lot of good things happen. My wife found an awesome job. I've got an awesome job. Health-wise, I'm on track. There are some setbacks, but there's always a solution to finding that too. And being able to come here every Sunday and praise and worship in this building has been absolutely amazing. It's done wonders for me and my family. I mean, my kids, one's on the praise team, one of them runs words, and the other one runs around yelling and screaming. And we all know who they are. And it's amazing that I get to see what I wanted growing up. I wanted it, but I didn't want it enough to pursue it. And being able to give that and give them the opportunity to see how you can praise and worship our God, and give them the opportunity to do it, and instill in them the importance of family and your faith, and to let them know that, it is okay to try your faith, but at the end of the day, when you try your faith, you're going to come back home. And that's what's been super important in my mind, is letting them see, you can challenge it, and you can read about it, but you're always going to come back home. At the end of the day, Jesus Christ is going to provide for you in whatever you're doing. It may not be now, it may take 20 years, but Jesus Christ is going to provide, and you're going to be okay. And that's kind of how my life has went. There's a lot of trials and tribulations growing up, but at the end of the day, I'm upright. I wake up every morning. God provides us another day. He provides us financially, mentally, physically, health-wise, and there's really no other thing to do but thank our Lord and Savior for the opportunities that we have every day, and for letting, someone like me coming from broken childhood to now, being able to stand up here without fear of anything, without fear of punishment or anything like that. I can talk to you guys and give my testimony and tell you how much I love Jesus Christ without somebody booing me or throwing something at me or arresting me for anything like that, So I encourage you, I guess, today to, especially for our kids, I think it's super important to encourage your kids to find their way to Jesus Christ, because it's going to be a path you may not have taken and you may not want them to take today, but letting them find Jesus Christ in their way and be the example for them and kind of give them a path, but don't be disappointed when they find another path to Jesus Christ, but rejoice in the fact that they will find Jesus Christ, and you can rejoice in the fact that it is you and your faith that got them to Jesus Christ. And that's it.
What's good, friends? Thank you so much for checking out today's message. I sincerely hope God was able to meet you where you're at and speak into your life in a new way today. If you want to connect with us, click on the connect link in the description. Whether you need prayer or if you just want someone to talk to, we'd love to reach out. If you want to support the ministry financially, click on the give link in the description. Every dollar goes to continuing the movement started by Jesus himself over 2,000 years ago. Lastly, if you want to hang out with us in person, we gather every week on Sundays at 11 a.m. Hope you all have a great week. We'll catch you next time.